It is Dr. Sergey. He is Professor of Management of Business School of Management and Public Administration. Belongs to University of District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., USA. His professional practice and scholarly interests are in the field of scientific, organizational research, government, multinational and military organizations. He received Ph.D. from George Washington University School of Business, working under the leadership of Dr. Elliott Jaques on dynamic theories in organizational science. Professor Innova has taught management on organizational courses at the University of District of Columbia as well as the George Washington University for over a decade and provided consultant services and a wide variety of organizations, including the USA Defense, Department of Defense, Fortune 1000 corporations, and other clients. Dr. Sergey, it is time for you. Please go ahead, share your presentation.
Salam alaikum, Indonesia, and wherever you guys are. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, my unmute button wasn't working, so you guys, I guess, unmuted me. So really honored to be invited, and thank you very much for the invitation. Really excited, and maybe one day I will be in Indonesia actually giving one of those talks, and honored and thank you and appreciate. So let's do the talk. Let me share my screen. All right, I appreciate. So I'm Dr. Sergey Ivanov. I'm a professor in Washington, D.C., United States, in the university which is in the nation's capital and the only university here in Washington, D.C. And the talk is Leaders, Followers, and Unicorns towards solving some of the today's worst problems. And I don't know, we're sort of on different parts of the globe. There's about 11 or 12 hour difference, and I'm sure it's as peaceful in your part of the world as it is here. So where is the world today? Anybody knows? So the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists in the United States has had a sort of a measure or gauge of where the world today as a planet since about 1950, since development of the nuclear weapons. And if you look at the clock, so midnight on this clock means a final catastrophe, meaning that the organized human life on this planet is no longer as we currently know it. And so if you look at it, we've been only very close to midnight. It was 2 minutes on midnight during the nuclear crisis between the United States and former Soviet Union in 1953. And then we sort of fallen back. It was 7 minutes to midnight, 9 minutes to midnight. And since 2017, we've been about 2.5 minutes to midnight. Last year, before the Ukraine war, it was 90 minutes to midnight, 100 seconds, 90 minutes to midnight, and so on. And what it means is that we are very close to a global catastrophe where we will no longer be functioning as we are functioning today. At least if you look at Chomsky's words, he calls it, Noam Chomsky, one of the US most prolific intellectuals, he calls it the end of the organized human life on Earth. And so at the same time, there are lots of conferences happening everywhere. Lots of books are being written, and we're all talking, we're all discussing, and we're trying to improve it. One of the latest books just came to my email, I think a few days ago, 2023, Essentials of Followership. And everybody writes books about leaders and followers and followership and what they are. And so, but the reality is that if you look at the world today, and it's gotten worse in the past, I don't know if you've noticed, 2 years and in the past week as the conference was just beginning, you see global wars in 2023, and probably it's going to go into 2024. When I was preparing the presentation, there was one wide war happening in Ukraine. Obviously, there was in Syria war was going on all the time, and a week ago there is a war between in Israel and in Palestine. So, and the doomsday clock, if you look at it, is probably off. It's probably about 60 seconds to midnight, considering what's happening in between China and Taiwan, China and Philippines. And so the reality versus language today, and it's sort of one of the examples, that the language of leadership which we use worldwide does not correspond to the reality in which we live. And fundamentally, when we talk about leadership in most systems in government, universities, corporate entities, we're all leaders and so on, the language of leadership today is nonsense. It doesn't contribute to the well-being of your society or our society. And so one of the best ways to test is to find out whether it's true or not, is to test it, and to test it against real situations. For example, another concept that people are publishing, leaders need to be better followers. There are about 80 to 90,000 books on leaders and followers and of all kinds of variations, and you can travel anywhere in the world on any of the leadership conferences. And so there's a followers and leadership theory in language. Let's test it. So the basic concept is that followers, there is no such thing as followers. They simply don't exist. For the past 50 years, we've spent developing that language in reality. So another book came out saying that to be a great follower, you need to be a great leader, you need to be a great follower. Let's test it. And some of you are deans, and I really like the welcoming message from the dean at this conference. Is anyone dean or university president present at this conference? Follow them. So how to test followership? Follow your dean. Don't let them out of your sight. Just follow them for the next day. Anybody has ever worked for a company? Try to follow, if you have a boss, try to follow your manager in a building, to the car, to the place where he or she lives, email, and let me know how that has worked out. Do you work for a company? You can follow the CEO, the head of the company. Explain to them that you're testing a leadership theory and you are their follower. In academia, are there any students here at the conference? I think you probably can't unmute yourself. Follow your professor. If any of you is a professor, in the building, to the car, places where they live, social media, anywhere. Email me and let me know what happens. In government, there are no such thing as government leaders. Come into any ministry and explain that you're a minister's follower and ask to follow in the building, trips, places where they go, social media, and anywhere. And it's not going to work very well. If you go to church, mosque, synagogue, temple, follow the religious leader 24/7. It's simply physically not going to happen. In sports, if you play sports, those of you who are young, follow your coach 24/7. Not going to happen. Are you a manager? And if you're a manager, do you want to be followed? Do you want your subordinates to follow your every step on Facebook, any other social media, anywhere in person? And the clear answer is going to be that no, you don't. Are you a dean, professor, president? Do you want to be followed? Do you want for your students and for other professors to follow you every step? Any of your parents, children? If any of you is a parent or a child, do your kids follow you? Do you follow your parents? This language doesn't even come to explaining the real phenomenon that happens in families. In the medical field, do you follow your medical doctor? No, you're simply a patient. Elon Musk. Anyone has ever heard of Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos? I wish you could unmute. You may have subscribed on Twitter or X, but are you going to do, if you're following Elon Musk, are you going to do what Elon Musk tells you to do? And if Elon Musk tells you what to do you have to do it? You can replace Elon Musk with any public figure that you like. Does Elon Musk tell you what to do, and do you have to do it? And if yes, yes, you do have to do what Elon Musk tells you to do. If you work in one of his companies, such as Tesla, SpaceX, Twitter, AI, and any other business. If you don't do as he tells you to do, if you work for the company, he will fire you. The word fire comes from a dictionary, set you aflame or shoot you with a gun. Look it up. And if you're not a follower, so what happens in companies, you're not a follower, you're an employee, and it's a big difference between being a follower within the leadership field and being an employee. Following in the companies is not a choice, and is the wrong word altogether. Similarly, when students are completing assignments or homework for the professors, you're not a follower, you're simply a student. Do you follow some of today's worst leaders? If you happen to live one of those places on earth. If you don't, they will fire you, such as they can set you aflame if you talk about the terrorist organizations or execute you with a gun, literally. If you're not a follower, simply you're an obedient subject. And there are a number of countries where people, unfortunately, live in this way. In real life situation, can you follow anybody? In most situations, you wouldn't. Go on the street and try to follow somebody. If you're in the United States, you would be arrested. Do you want to be followed? Probably not. So what you find is that followership by itself does not exist. It's simply a unicorn. And unicorn is a mystical feature, mystical animal that sort of lives in movie theaters and in PowerPoints. But when you go in the real life, when you go to the zoo, you will never see an animal like that. And so followership is not a real concept altogether that we've been spending about the past 50 years discussing. And if followership does not exist, what about leadership? And I'm going to leave it for the next talk, but to rethink the concept of leadership. And whether leadership by itself is an existing concept or if it's another made up concept that does not exist. And the world today is, when we spend our time and invest our energies into sort of trivial discussions that have no bearing to reality, the world is coming close to the end of this organized organized human life. We're about a second, 60 seconds to midnight. And instead of solving complex issues society is facing today, as scholars, most of us have engaged for over 50 years in useless discussions, watching the world sleeping into a very dangerous place. And so perhaps, and my hope is, perhaps it's time to start discussing openly the real issues of the humanity and our only and single planetary civilization faces, throwing away all ill-conceived concepts and ideas with vague or little meaning. And hopefully this is exactly what this conference is for. And I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to accentuate that if you look at the world today, we no longer live in Indonesia, in the United States. There's one planet in which we're somehow trying to survive, and hopefully that the next century is going to be a little bit better than the past 2 years. Thank you all very much, and let me know if you have any questions or comments.